Hi, my name is Barry Sterling Mitchell. I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings and the Bias Plus reports, and this is Ben and Barry on football.
Hello out there. This is your co-host, Ben Dickerson. Draft is over. Hope you guys are all happy with the picks that your teams made. The season will be starting soon. We'll be having OTAs and all that other good stuff. So I guess right now, I guess the best thing for us to do is kind of review the draft, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Ben, there is so much happening right now, and we're going to try to talk about it all. Again, I always remind people that the things that we talk about are right there on our Facebook page, facebook.com/BMBOF, so that people can comment in advance. And if we have an opportunity to, share those comments, we would really like to do that. So we always invite people to comment, but we have a lot of things to talk about. So yeah, let's go ahead and knock the draft out. You made a challenge to Mel Kiper.
Okay. Yeah. That
And
doesn't,
we said we would come back
that doesn't
this week
sound good.
and actually score out these mock drafts. Now, Ben, this is the first for me in mock drafts. I'm not really a mock draft, person, but as we've done this show over the years, we've gotten more and more into every phase of the game, especially in the postseason, in the off season, I guess is really what I should say. And there's so much business happening in the off season, and the games are almost as intense, if not more, than during that season when they're actually on the field playing. There's like so much happening. So uh, let's get ready to kick off the draft. Let me first get some initial, reactions from you on the draft itself.
Okay. Well, first of all, the draft did not go exactly the way I thought, which we'll find out when we do my draft grade. But I kind of assumed that things may not go exactly the way I planned simply because there were going to be draft night trades. So teams trading up, teams trading down kind of changes not only who they pick, but who subsequent teams would pick afterwards. I figured there would be some trading up in an effort to get possibly a quarterback or somebody else at a particular position of need for whatever team did it. And also, I assumed, which actually turned out to be true, that certain teams may trade down after someone traded up and took a player that the team that traded down possibly was interested in. And once they realized they could not get that player, they figured, hey, what the heck? I'll trade down, give somebody else my spot, give them an opportunity to pick somebody that they've got their eye on, pick up a couple of draft picks, okay, in the meantime, and still be able to get a quality player where I end up. And that's exactly what happened. Also, the other conundrum with my score was there were a few teams that made some real head scratching picks.
Well, the theme of last week's show was, is the draft in and of itself a crapshoot? Now, if the actual draft is a crapshoot where people have millions of dollars on the line, and we're going to talk about the money that these draftees get, because I have an article which actually kind of breaks that information down. It's very interesting. Um, then the people who are doing the mock drafts, they don't have it. They're not really, there's no money coming out of their pocket unless they're, competing in something. Um, and so they're making just the best choice that they can make. The most unique mock draft probably is coming from, my girl Cynthia Freeland. I'm a big Cynthia Freeland algorithm. She's just smarter than the average, you know, anybody. And she said when she was doing her mock drafts, she said, my algorithms were designed to pick the person that would give them the best chance of winning a Super Bowl. So that automatically made it different than everybody else's mock draft, where they might think what they're trying to figure out what the team's going to do. She's like what the team should do as far as she's concerned. So I didn't include her mock draft when I took, look at the results, but I did try to include some well-known people. So let's take a quick look at the summary sheet that I put together. So the mock draft 2021 mock NFL draft results, or I guess I should say NFL mock draft results. First of all, I couldn't find Chris Sims. I looked for him because I watch him every day. But as you can see, up in the upper level of all of the mock drafts, at best was about a 50. Now, the 2021 mock draft champion, according to the Huddle website, was a person named Josh Norris from Underdog Fantasy, and he totaled 59 points.
Amazing.
Isn't that amazing? I'm like, wow, And so I have to give it to the Huddle because they have like the last 5-year averages. So these mock drafts that you and I really haven't been that big a part of or haven't really been that involved in. This is really the first year.
Yeah, this is my first time ever actually giving it some real thought and cataloging an actual mock, putting it on paper and committing to it. It's my first time doing it.
Yeah. I think you guys actually did a pretty good job considering now that we know how hard that job is. Yes. You know what I mean? When we do the Bias Plus reports, if we're looking for about a 70% win ratio, on our calls for matchups on games, but on the calls for the mock draft, 59 is winning it all. So let's just run down real quick for the radio audience. And again, the radio audience will be hearing this on Fridays from 6 to 7:30 on WJRL 95.3 online radio. And again, that's at WJRL953.com. Okay. So Reginald Brooks, Fantasy Football 101, scored a 50. Jason Boris, Times News, scored a 50. Mike Mayock didn't even beat these guys out. He scored a 49.
Hold it. Mike Mayock still works for NFL Network.
According, they had him in there.
How can the general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders work for NFL Network?
Well, maybe, again, they just had this article just came out and they had that listed like that for him. So I don't know. That's a great question. I took it from the article.
Maybe they just went to him and say, hey, Mike, throw together a mock for us because you've been doing this for so many years before you started working with the Raiders and people are interested in what you think.
And he might have done that. Actually, if I remember correctly, I think he mocked the mock.
Yeah, well, guess what? A lot of these mock people are mocking his picks.
Ryan Philpott from the Football Hub had a 47. Brad Clark, NFL's Future, had a 46. Lance Zierlein. Now that's a name that
who I respect.
43. And right below him is your boy, Mel Kiper.
Who I respect.
38. I think this was his worst year.
Okay. Well,
he really struggled.
If this was Mel Kiper's first year.
Worst
year. And he is basically the guru of this thing. He's the first guy that really made mock drafts a thing, as they like to say. Okay. And he got a 38 and I got a 33 on my first chance at it. I feel pretty good.
Okay. Well, how about this? Daniel Jeremiah, 1 point below him at 37. And one of my heroes, Peter Schrager, with all the inside connections wound up with a
supposedly.
36.
Yeah, and here we are at 33. Get out of here on our first try, bro. I feel way better now.
You feel better?
I feel far better than I did when this
And
started.
you would have felt even better had you left it at 2.0, right?
Yes, if I had stuck with my mock draft 2.0, I would have gotten a better score. I'm sure of it. I'm not exactly sure what the score would have been, but I know I would have hit several on the head. Again, when you have draft night trades right in the middle of the thing, somebody says, oh, so-and-so just traded with so-and-so. That throws everything off. So the people that get high scores in the high 40s and the 50 and the guy that got the 59, they speculated all that stuff out. I don't even know if I have time to put that much thought into it. But hey, that's what they do. Kudos to them.
All right. That's, again, congrats on your first. You and your brother Donald kind of put your head together there. That those other people all have tremendous support systems, the stations that they work for, the organizations that they work for. Now, some of those names that I didn't know, I don't know what type of support or what type of, like in the back, the producers in the background pulling up stats left and right. You have your brother Donald, okay, our personal college football savant. We'll see. So let them know how you guys did, so that you can, be ready for next year. I'm sure he'll be that much more juiced.
Oh yeah, we're gonna work on it next year.
No doubt.
We're gonna put in some real work next year.
All right. Good stuff. So in the next segment, Ben, I want to talk real quick about my Niners. You said last week that it was going to be the third pick of the draft that sort of set off a chain reaction along the rest of the draft once the Niners made their choice, whatever that happened to be. Also, when we talked about it last week, we looked at the trades that got the Niners to the third pick of the draft. And in the chart where they looked at what was acquired by the teams involved, the Dolphins and the Eagles, versus what they gave up, right? And the chart basically said that just based on the rankings of the draft picks, the Dolphins came out in a positive, the Eagles came out in a positive, and they were in the 40 range positive, and the Niners came out in the negative at about 75. So the Niners reached way down and in their pockets for this particular pick. Now, what I said, and I asked the question, based on what the Niners gave up, when you looked at those top 5 quarterbacks, so we assume this was going to be for a quarterback, was really any of those quarterbacks worth it? That was just the question. So the interesting point that Kyle Shanahan made was that basically he said, when we made those draft changes, we already knew who we wanted. We were going to take the opportunity to look at everybody, but we kind of already knew. So I'm like, okay, so you did all of this to get Trey Lance. If this works, Kyle Shanahan will be remembered as one of the geniuses. He's already considered an offensive mind, but relative to the draft and picking quarterbacks, he'll be considered one of the geniuses of the NFL, because we found out last week that there was only about a 33% what they call win ratio. In other words, when we looked at the 2017 draft and they were considered either wins or losses or meh, right? Losses and meh were like 6 out of 10. Wins were only about 33%. So with the odds being so low of getting it right and going deep into your draft and drafting, giving away 2 future first rounders for this guy who you said you knew you wanted all along, that's some high stakes, high roller stuff going on right there, man. let's
Yeah,
go.
I would
Let's
agree
go
with
to
you.
Atlantic
Pretty
City.
high stakes, and you're not going to really know. Like when we went through the thing last week with either guy's a hit or he's a miss or he's a meh. You know what I mean? You don't know until he plays. So, you know, but I'm sure that part of their process in trying to decide who they want to take and who they thought would be worth what they gave up was if Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy and plays well, this guy can sit back and learn, and he's our quarterback of the future for whoever knows how long. If Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured week 3, week 7, can this guy, after being in that quarterback room for from day one until that point, come in and win games for us? If Jimmy Garoppolo plays poorly, can we say, hey, you know what? We're going to let the young guy play. Will he come in and do a Herbert and win games for us? And that's how they picked, that's how they decided who they wanted. Now, what they gave up for him is always going to be up for debate, and we won't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing until he actually gets on the field. But I think that was part of the process in deciding who they were going to pick.
Big rollers, big rollers. I'm like, okay, guy, let's go. And I wanted them, but I did question whether or not we paid too much. We will find out. Um, it was great to hear that Garoppolo was one of the first people to text them. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any conflict there, unlike what's coming out of Green Bay right now, and some of the other places where some of the quarterbacks were more in conflict. I think Jimmy's kind of cool about it, having had a model, Tom Brady, which he said Tom Brady treated him nice and worked with him, and taught him stuff. So, and let's face it, you got every quarterback that starts knows that the team has to have a good backup or has to be preparing for the future. So, to have another quarterback being groomed shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be that big of a mind thing. So, I'll leave that there. We will jump over, and I would like to hear from you. Do you have, I don't want to make this a long conversation about Aaron Rodgers, but let's face it, it's big news. It's happening everywhere right now. When we talked about Aaron before, I kind of just looked at it like they had the number one offense last year. So I don't know what he really wants. But as it's coming out, apparently what he really wants is some influence in the decisions that are being made and what he would consider the commitment to win now with him. And that's something he seems to have a question about, and is leading him to ask for his GM to be fired, which I just think is just an amazing power play right there. So I'll turn it over to you. Tell me what you got.
I would agree when a player says, I don't want to play for this organization anymore unless you get rid of the general manager. That's a big time power play. I doubt that he will be successful with that. Even if the powers that be had an inkling that perhaps this GM was kind of off on the wrong track and we might want to think about maybe terminating this guy, it's almost like they can't do it now because that seems like they're bending to the will of a player. And that's something that I'm sure they're not going to want to do, or we're going to have LeBron all over again here in the NFL. So, but my thing with him is, I understand exactly where Aaron Rodgers is coming for. Yeah, they had the number one offense. That's how great he was. As far as I'm concerned, what he did last season, he should have been the runaway MVP. There shouldn't have been anybody else even close. Okay. They had a very good running game. Not a great running game, but a very good running game. They had a little better than average defense. So that pretty much doomed them. When we say you need a great defense and a really good running game to win a Super Bowl, that pretty much doomed them. They still almost beat Tampa Bay in the conference championship. They almost won that game. They had that game within their sights. And people can say, well, he should have ran on that play or this or that, and then blame it on him. But he's been carrying that team on his back for a couple of years now. And they've had opportunities to get him weapons. He basically has one real weapon. That's it. Davante Adams. That's it.
You don't consider his running back a real weapon?
Yes, he's a real weapon. I said they have a very good running game. So I'm talking about Aaron Jones when I talk about that. Because his back,
he's one real weapon.
He has a nuclear weapon, and then he has like the old A-bomb. Okay? You need a couple of nuclear weapons. Okay? Tampa Bay has like 3 nuclear weapons and 2 A-bombs.
But Ben, Tampa Bay didn't have the number 1 offense last year.
They didn't need the number 1 offense. They won games.
Right, but you're talking about Aaron as if he needs weapons, but he had the number 1 offense. How do you need weapons if you have the number 1 offense? You're obviously scoring points.
Tampa Bay didn't have the number 1 offense because they went risk it, no biscuit for 6 weeks until Tom Brady smacked the coach in the face and said, this isn't it. We're not scoring points like we should with the weapons that we have. They wasted a quarter of a season with that same dumb offense that doomed Jameis Winston.
So
until
you think
Tom Brady said, bro,
if they had been running the Brady offense earlier, then they might have been the number 1 offense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
And the Packers would have been number what? 2?
Number 2.
Number 2 ain't bad.
It's all on Aaron, bro.
That means they needed the defensive help. You and I, we talked about their defense last year as being needy. And we know offense sells tickets and defense wins championships. So weapons for Aaron does not seem to be the priority if your defense is the weakest of the 2 units. And your number 1 unit,
you have the number 1. If you have the number 1 offense, and most people can't even tell you, unless they're Packers fans or they play fantasy heavy, can even tell you, if I say name 4 wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers, most people can't do it.
So what? They had the number 1 offense. They scored more points than any team in the NFL. The Dolphins had the no-name defense when they went undefeated.
Bro, that's not even, you're way off when you said that. Take that back.
I did.
That they were the no-name defense means absolutely nothing. That defense was freaking great.
Oh yes, it was. And they took pride in the fact that they weren't the big names that were elsewhere in the NFL.
No, but they were a better team. Okay? Aaron Rodgers carried this team. You look at the stats of the skill position players, you will find that other than Davante Adams, they're all really close. If you graph them, they're like this. He was able to make sure that every single person contributed. He squeezed every little bit of juice out of every skilled player on that team with his individual skills. He made throws to players that couldn't start on other teams because he is Aaron Rodgers and can make those throws. I don't know what it is you don't understand about this, man. Get that man one receiver, one more good receiver, and he wouldn't even be talking about this right now. Get him one lineman. You see all the offensive tackles that went in the first round and the second round? If they had gotten him one of them, just one, he wouldn't be talking about this right now. But who did they take?
Continue this conversation.
Who did they tell? Don't shut me down now.
Well, okay, you got something more to say? Go ahead, knock stuff out.
Yeah, when did the Packers
The fact
pick?
of the matter is they still had the #1 offense. That's a stat that you're not going to be able to argue all the way around.
They will
And
not stay the #1 offense forever. How long do you think he can play? The man's like 38.
so
How
they
long
need
do you
to
think
fix
he
the
can go like that?
defense. They need to fix the defense.
I'll give you an analogy. Remember all the great seasons and all the Super Bowls that Tom Brady won with basically nobody? And people were like, how did he do it? How did he do it? How did he do it? It's the same thing because he's Tom Brady. He squeezed every little bit of juice out of every one of them no-name receivers and every one of them running backs. And they shuttled 3 and 4 running backs in and out and all that. But they had a good offensive line. So they kept the run game going. And he made throws that other teams couldn't make, other quarterbacks couldn't make to players that wouldn't start on those other teams. And that's how he did it. But as he got older, it got more and more difficult. And even Brady, before he left, started asking, not in the Rodgers way, but in a nice, quiet way, to get him some weapons. And Belichick didn't do it. And he kept going. And Brady left. And when he left that trash to Cam Newton, who can't throw the ball like Tom Brady. And that's what you get. That's what you get. And then Aaron Rodgers sees the same thing happening to him. And before it happens, if I'm going to stay here, you are not going to have me carry this entire team to the not number 3. If he was the number 3 offense with that team, that would still be MVP worthy.
He was the MVP, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the problem?
Unanimous. Because the team, the offense is not, they have not attempted to stack it with weapons that would make him a sure thing to be #1 year after year and have, excuse me, 2 or 3 Super Bowls by now. They should have 3 Super Bowls by now with him. They have 1 because they refuse to give him weapons. There's 7 rounds in the draft. 7 rounds in the draft. He's been looking for offensive weapons for at least a minimum of the last 3 seasons, vocally. And they have not gone to try to get him to get a solid #1A, #2 receiver. They haven't done it.
So let's assume that he will be better with another #1 receiver. We know what a good #1 can help you with. We saw it happen in Buffalo. We saw it happen in Arizona. You bring these top receivers in and all, and these quarterbacks look that much better. But they do need help defensively, correct?
Absolutely. I just said there's 7 rounds in the draft. You can get defensive help anywhere. You know who their first pick was?
Go ahead.
A no-name quarterback from Georgia named Eric Stokes. SB Nation, Sports Blog Nation, they graded that pick a D. That's D, as in Dickerson. Your first round pick gets graded as a D. Not only did they go defense like you wanted them to do, but they picked a bad player. There was far more players better cornerbacks. There was a safety that was graded higher, and there were offensive linemen that teams were begging would still be there in the second round that they could have took to protect him. And they didn't do any of that. None of it. And took a second rate I'm sorry, I shouldn't call the guy names. I'm sorry. But this guy had a low second round, third round grade by the experts. So why you take him in the first round? It's like a slap in the face. It's awful. They didn't even attempt to make their quarterback happy. You see what the Seahawks are doing? Russell Wilson spoke out, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's get this man. Let's. That's what you do. That's what an NFL team does when they have a franchise quarterback. You help him out. You don't necessarily have to make it seem like, well, we're going to bring him in the room and he's going to be in the war room and he's going to help us make the picks. It only takes one pick, maybe two, to satisfy an NFL quarterback. Just pick this one guy. I don't care where you get him, but figure out where you want to put him on your board and try to make sure you get either him or him, and you won't hear a peep out of me. And then you can pick everybody. I don't care. But if you get me that guy or that guy, we're good. That's all Rodgers is asking for. That's it. And they didn't even do it. It's like
now, this is the other point that I do want to make sure that I mention is that we have not heard anything come out of Rodgers' mouth himself. Everything has been hearsay. So,
okay.
You know, that I just want to mention that because we're attributing a lot to him that has not actually been said that I can say that I heard or you heard, anybody heard per se. You know, and the big thing was that I understand that he apparently is really conflicting with the GM, and a lot of this, you know, stuff you're talking about draft, I'm sure has a lot to do with it, the picks and what are you doing,
right,
et cetera, et cetera.
So
that's a big piece of drama.
Yes, it is. You haven't heard too much from the head coach either, which means to me that he sits behind the GM when it comes to the draft. The GM has more power when picking players than anybody else in that organization. That's what's pretty clear. And Mark Schlereth said he heard from somebody outside of the Denver Broncos or Green Bay Packers organization. So somebody from some other organization say that Denver had the inside track on getting Aaron Rodgers, and he said out of his mouth on television, Aaron Rodgers called his phone and asked him, where did he hear that from? And he said he didn't tell him who, but he said it wasn't anybody from the Denver organization. And Aaron Rodgers said, oh, okay, cool. So to me, that means he's sticking to his guns, okay? Believe me, he can't just go where he wants. He's under contract. He's trying to force a trade. If he can't force a trade, he'll threaten to sit out. He can't just up and go. You know what I mean? So everything he's doing is to try to put pressure on the Packers to either do right by him or trade him. And the best way to get out of town is to say, I ain't playing, which he can do that. He can retire, which I don't think he wants to do, but he can threaten to retire or he can threaten to sit out. Let's see how they do if Jordan Love has to start.
That's a big question.
They had a couple blowout games. Did Jordan Love get in the game? I have to look, see, does Jordan Love have any stats from 2020?
No.
Okay, so how good can Jordan Love? They traded up. They traded up to get Jordan Love like he was Trey Lance, but he's not.
I don't know what he is, and again, we haven't seen him at all. It is an intriguing question to ask, you know, just how good he is, because again, if he's really not ready to play, if he's not that good, then it does make their situation look pretty bad, no doubt about it. So, all right. You got more for us? Is that
I'm done.
You're done?
You come back down.
You all right now?
Yeah.
Well, let me just throw this up real quick for the people so that they know.
Jim and Barry on football. What you need to know when you need to know it. Tune in Fridays, 6 to 7:30 p.m.
There you go. Ben and Barry on football Friday. Hey, look at us, Ben. We was all young. we had hair, like normal hair.
Yeah, I actually did have hair.
When you need to know it. All right, there you go. That's enough of that. Deion prime time was a little upset, Benny. There were
Uh,
no
yeah.
HBCU players taken in the NFL draft. Zero. We spoke a lot last week about Deion and how the Hall of Famers are becoming head coaches and the things that we expect to change as a result. And one of the reasons that I had asked you about Donald, because I didn't know if your brother might know some of the players a little more than what I could say I know, that were there in the HBCU and available for the draft, but not picked. Now it's a little difficult to say. You can't call it necessarily racist because the amount of diversity that was actually chosen. So, but the diversity was from major colleges, and these players, African American, et cetera, would chose those colleges to go to. And that's one of the challenges of the HBCU, is that your top players are going to the big schools and aren't necessarily going to the HBCU. So they're hoping that people like Deion, Marshall Faulk, and some of the other former NFL greats that are looking to coach will attract some of those players and raise the whole level and make it attractive relative to the draft. But they've had drafts out of the HBCU before, but just not this year. So don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that, but he was pretty frustrated, and he texted out. He said on the Undefeated, there were 259 picks in the 2021 NFL draft. Not a single draft pick featured a player from the HBCUs. He tweeted, "And we have the audacity to hate on one another while our kids are being neglected and rejected." He said, "I witnessed a multitude of kids that we played against that were more than qualified to be drafted. My prayers are that this won't ever happen again. Get your knife out my back and fight with me, not against me." So Deion got really, really upset on that. What do you think about that?
Well, he first of all, what he said was true. Um, Secondly, he took the opportunity to make it clear that there's a lot more at stake here, and that some of these HBCU coaches and organizations need to focus a little bit more on trying to develop their players to be NFL ready, as opposed to talk about him. Now, let's face it, he put himself in a position to be talked about. He's a big time star. He's a Hall of Famer, and he's known for being a talker. Okay. So that kind of lends itself to being talked at, especially if a team was actually able to beat his team. They took that as a bragging rights kind of thing. And you can't blame them. But his point is, I think that if we work together to try to get more 4 and 5 star athletes into our programs, then we will begin to see more of our athletes getting picked in the NFL draft, and at least in free agency. Now, I expect that there will be a couple that will go in free agency. I don't know who they are. Don't ask me any names or anything like that, because I was working so hard on these mocks and doing all this other stuff that I didn't really look into that. But I did happen to look, when I saw this article, I looked back to 2020. And in 2020, there was one HBCU player selected in the draft. He went in the last round, in the 7th round. And I don't even really recognize his name. I'm not even sure if he's still on the team that selected him. So they got a lot of work to do. But trust me, the NFL turns over every rock. Trust me. They go everywhere and they look at everybody. They got feelers out in every football venue there is. If there's some guy playing over in Europe that's blowing up, they'll find him. If there's somebody in Canada that's really blowing up, they'll find him. You know, if there's somebody in semi-pro, shoot, they found a coach in semi-pro. She's on the Buccaneers staff now. They're out there.
They actually have just brought in some of the international players onto some practice squads.
Right. So they're giving them an eyeball chance to make an impression. And I think that's great. But the reason that they brought those particular guys in is because they got people out there watching them. They have scouts. They have extensive scouting. Every NFL team does. Some more than others. So if you can play, they will find you, you know? And, you know, like I said, that's why I wait for free agency. I wait for, you know, guys that might be sitting home working a regular job, they get a call, or maybe you jump in an arena league or something, but you got to stay out there. You got to stay active. If you're a good athlete, they will find you. But it starts in the beginning. It starts at minimum at the high school level. And when they put out the rankings for high school players, they put them out for athletes, and then they put them out for every position. Okay? You guys get 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, and 1 star. And all the 5s and all the 4s go to big universities. And guys like Deion, Jackson State, and Grambling, and Southern, they can only hope to grab a 4-star here and there, maybe get a junior college transfer, or grab as many 3-star athletes as they can. It's the best they can do, you know? But I believe that's going to change. I can remember some years ago when we were talking about how come nobody will pick a black quarterback, and why is it that nobody wants a quarterback that can run because they think pocket passer is the way to go. And we sat here on this program and we said, that's going to change. And the next couple of years, you will see that change. And we are in the midst of that change right now. So same things can happen for HBCUs. Hey, Shaq's son is going to a HBCU. And he's been recruited by Division I schools all over the place. He's going to Texas Southern. Same school, I think, I believe Michael Strahan went to Texas Southern.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There's another kid out on the West Coast who is a big time, this basketball, of course, but I'm saying the word is out. It's a trend beginning, and I believe it will continue. And some of these kids are going to start going to HBCUs instead of going to big time Division I schools. It's going to happen.
If you're an agent and you were in touch, I guess, with a high school kid, I know you can't give them money and all of that kind of stuff. NCAA rules aside for a second, what do you think that agent would tell that kid, especially after this year where there were none taken? So if it's 2022, 2023, and maybe the Deion effect hasn't completely taken hold, do you still point him to an HBCU?
No, you point him to Michigan. You point him to LSU. You point him to Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M. First of all, a high school kid can't have an agent. So we're talking about like an advisor, right?
An advisor, yeah. For lack of a better term, that's what I was saying. Within NCAA rules, you know,
yes.
that they were talking to, like, you know, where should my kid think about going?
If you're a 5-star, if you're a 5-star athlete, if you're in the I forget what the high school rating system thing is, but if you're like a high school top 100 player, people are going to advise you to go to a Division I school, the best school. And if Saban comes to your house and the LSU coach comes to your house, and you know, I mean, and then Deion comes to your house, where are you going to go? If you're a 3-star, you might go with Deion. You know why? Because you know if I go to Alabama, even though they're recruiting me, I'm going to redshirt and I'm going to sit till my senior year before I get on the field. Junior year if I'm lucky. But if I go play at Jackson State, I can start day one. Now, if you get a couple 4-star athletes, top 100 high school players, go to Jackson State or Southern or Florida A&M and start day one and rip the SWAC to shreds, guess what? They'll get drafted.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Somebody has to break the chain. Somebody has to show through.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. There have been plenty of 1AA guys and Division II guys to make it in the NFL. There's been plenty. They will find you, but you got to really show. Because the first thing the critics are going to say is, well, look at his competition.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were saying about Trey Lance.
Right. And that's one, Division One. That's not even maybe they are 1AA. They might be 1AA, but still. But what Trey Lance had going for him, and I explained this in the other show, is they basically ran the 49ers offense. I mean, he was under center. He ran play action from under center. That's what they do. So, and he did it well.
17-0.
There you go. So, that he had that going for him.
Hey, Ben, when Kaepernick was with the Niners, I had a nickname. I used to call him CK, and the Capper kids, right? Because they were all young, right, running around. I'm like, okay, Trey Lance has the babyest face. And I'm trying to think, okay, got to come up with a nickname for him, other than the obvious baby face. I don't know, how that might go. But he just looks so young, you know what I mean? But when we talk to him, every time they talk to him, they're always impressed by how intelligently, he speaks to them, how smooth he is, and all of that kind of stuff. So very impressed, with him and overall. Okay. What I wanted to share next, some stuff on an individual basis. So let's go to my man, Mr. DK Metcalf, who you sent me the link about him making a serious run at qualifying for the Olympics in the 100-meter dash. Now, Benny, first off, did you run track?
Yes.
What did you run?
I ran the 180-yard low hurdles.
Hurdles?
I ran the 180 lows and I ran the 120 highs.
Wow, you were a hurdler, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. Hurdlers are extremely athletic. I'm always impressed by hurdlers. That's a crazy event. So what do you think about his, chances of, I think he was supposed to come in, he has to come in at a 10-2 in 100 to qualify or something like that?
I think qualify, he's got to run a 10-5.
10-5?
But that just puts him like to the next level to try to actually make the team. Because you can only take so many people, Wow. It's a shame. We waited 4 years for the Olympics, and then another year went by because of COVID. So I haven't been up on my track and field. So I'm not exactly sure how the trials go. But I think it's pretty cool that he's going to give it a shot.
I think it's cool also, except that in the back of my mind, I fear a hamstring pull somewhere along the line.
Nah, you can't think like that, bro. You can't think like that.
Shoot, if you're my wide receiver, I'm thinking about all of those risks and things that you outside doing the other stuff. You know what I mean? They just had one guy broke his foot training. I think it was with the Broncos, the lineman.
Yeah,
Because
he's not.
something happened. They're saying he has a $20 million at potential risk here loss because of that.
He tore his Achilles.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, there's big money at stake when you're talking about, and these guys, some of these guys hurt themselves jogging around the darn track at the end. What was it? In the beginning of last year, I think it was so many injuries. Again, with the crazy off season and not having the normal stuff, so many soft tissue injuries happen, things of that nature. But he's a beast in the workout room, so I think that he should be okay for real. But that did pop in the back of my mind, because
Yeah,
when you start
he
running
might.
against those track guys, man, them guys is fleet.
What will probably work against him is he's probably, but of course he's had the whole off season, because I was going to say he's probably a little too muscled up to really run the top 100 time that he could run. But if he's kind of been, taking care of himself during the off season, maybe shed a few pounds, um, but stay in the weight room and just get a lot of running in, he could probably pull this off. But there is a difference between running track and playing football, and there's a difference between track shape and football shape. So I'm not sure that the Seahawks are going to be real happy about him making that transition if, in fact, he makes the team, because then he's got to go to Tokyo, which means he won't be able to work out with the team. The Olympics, I believe, are going to be in June and July. I'm not 100% sure. July. So that means they're going to push right up again. Like as soon as it's over, this is if he makes it. As soon as it's over, he has to come right back and report to camp, report to the team.
Well, he's got 2 years in the system, so he kind of knows what's going on.
Right, but I'm talking about track shape is different from football shape.
Oh, that's why I was worried about the hamstring, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't run track; I was in the field events. But you're right, man. And then, like I'm saying, you're talking about pushing yourself. I mean, he pushed himself to run down Buda Baker, but you're talking about the fastest guys in the world here. That you're going up against. So you see them guys fall at the finish line, just trying to lean forward and get what they can get and just go down.
Yeah, it's July 23rd to August 8th.
No, right after my birthday.
Yeah, that's not terrible. So he'll still have time. He'll have a couple of weeks to kind of get back in the weight room and get himself right for football. But I'm not too worried about it. I kind of hope he makes it.
I'm rooting for him also. That's so okay, fantastic. All right. Just a few more things that we'll talk about real quick. I did want to mention this because I always want to encourage young guys who, if you're in a situation, you're a sophomore or junior in college and you're playing football and the NFL comes to you or somebody comes to you and say, hey, look, you could go in the first round, no later than the second round. Do you leave your education and go get that contract? And I'm one of those people that always say, yeah, because you can always go back and get the education. You know what I mean? And Tua, say his last name, Tagliavolt. I keep messing it up.
Tagovailoa. Just call it Tua, bro.
Tua. No, I know. Tua went back and completed his degree. He earned his bachelor's degree. And I just wanted to kind of, highlight that because I just think it's an awesome thing. And I want to make sure that, guys realize that, guys are doing that. That is a thing now. So, to take the contract to stay in school is a bit of a different opportunity. You can't always go back, finish that education. I think Larry Fitzgerald did the same thing. He's famous for his commercial where he talks about he promised his mother that he would get his degree. And, so he wanted to make sure that he did that. And so he actually completed that. So he retired. He's retiring, right? Am I correct?
Yes, he is officially retired. Yes.
NFL going to be without Fitz.
Hall of Fame?
Oh, you know me. I'm an easy Hall of Famer.
You let everybody in.
I'm letting everybody.
I'm letting everybody in.
I'm an easy Hall of Famer, man. I'm loving them. Yes, go ahead, Larry. Yep. You're right in there, no doubt about it. All right, so that I did want to mention that real quick because I just thought that was awesome. So next up, I wanted to mention we talked about this young man last week, and he did get chosen in the first round. I think he's slated to make guaranteed somewhere in the $11 million range as a pick in the first round for the place that he went. On our Facebook page, I actually have an article which takes you through the draft picks and talks about the contracts that they are expected to get based on the rookie contract setup in the union agreement. They have two parts to it: one salary, and the other is some the guaranteed money. And the only money that they know they're going to get is the guarantee. That salary, could or could not be a part of it. So when I looked at it, I was just looking at the guaranteed money. But again, his story being what it was, coming out of Africa, coming out of a refugee camp in Liberia. His mother had to flee because of the violence between the different factions, the tribes or whatever. Brought him and his brother to Providence, and escaped that particular situation, and then had to raise her two sons in the United States. And so she struggled. And again, the story was he was offered to go to a Catholic high school that was renowned for football. And he told her, he said, if you send me there, I promise you I will get a scholarship, or you will not have to pay for college. And apparently she worked like 3 jobs.
She worked 3 jobs to get the tuition for high school. And he told her, if you can get me in this high school, you will not have to pay for college. He guaranteed her that. He said, I guarantee. That's what he said to her.
Guarantee it.
As a high school kid. Mom, if you can pay to put me through this school, I guarantee you will not have to pay for college.
I can't wait to see him play, because I just think he's got probably the most serious and inspired of any of the athletes.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, it's just, listen to him talk and, talk about his mom and everything. It's very inspirational. So I always recommend everybody go find out more about Kwity Paye. Again, he was named after his grandfather, who was killed in one of those raids. And his mother still cries about that, till today. So that's just something that I thought was very, very inspirational. Speaking of inspirational, Ben, what'd you think about this? Myles Garrett. I don't know who tailored that suit. Now, I don't think I've ever seen anybody busting out of a suit the way Myles Garrett was coming out of this thing.
Yo, that looks like one of them fake Johns with the muscles built in.
Yeah, with the padding.
The muscles are built in the suit.
The Superman pads.
Yeah, the Superman. Yo, this dude is a beast. That's crazy.
Is that crazy? Had you seen that picture?
Wait. Forget the regular muscle, the shoulders and the body. Look at his forearms. Who busts out the suit at the forearms? Are you kidding me? And guess what? He got on a turtleneck. Yeah. It was like, dude, you should put on a shirt and tie. He's like, what? A tie? On this neck?
Yeah, I can't imagine what the neck really looks like coming out of that suit.
Crazy.
I'm like, when I saw this, I said, holy mackerel. Myles is ready for next year right now.
Bro, I know I say it every year, Every year I say, I can't wait for the season to start. I said it last year, but I had very teeny reservations because I knew there was going to be some COVID mess here and there. You know what I mean? To mess with my fantasy and all. But this season, with this draft class, this might be, I don't even want to say it because I don't know. This could be one of the best wide receiver classes and one of the best offensive lineman classes together that we've had in years. There's so many quality receivers, so many quality offensive linemen, especially at the tackle position. You can tell that these guys are going into college and they're like going where they know that they can get the experience necessary to be a high draft pick into the NFL and play offensive line and play tackle. And if they got tackle size, but they don't have the length in their arms, or maybe their footwork isn't as good as some of the top tackles, they're going to get bumped down to guard and they're going to play big time and they're going to get picked high anyway. They know that. So they want to go to Alabama. They want to go to LSU. People wonder why these players all flock to these certain schools. This is why, because that's money.
Big money, man. Big money. Big money.
Wouldn't give a thought about an offense. You can get a good offensive lineman in the third round. Not thinking like that anymore. Not thinking about that anymore.
The Kansas City Chiefs had more of a plan for offensive line than we thought they had after all the running around Mahomes had wound up doing,
Well, they
so
did the right thing.
Yeah, and so we still have those questions about the running quarterback, and I still have some issues with that. We'll talk about that in a future show. And a couple things before we wrap up today. And again, I want to recognize our radio audience at WJRL953.com and remind everyone that this is Ben and Barry on Football, and our website is benandbarryonfootball.com. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, podcasts on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple. What am I missing, Benny? Anything?
I think you got them all.
Okay, so there we go. You were mentioning how much money these young men are about to make and why they make these choices to go to these big schools. And you're absolutely right. It's a big thing. Brandon Copeland is an NFL linebacker, graduate of University of Pennsylvania, who actually teaches financial literacy to NFL players. Are you familiar with Brandon?
Yes. And
Okay.
what he's doing is tremendous, because the part that a lot of people don't put a lot of thought into is some of these kids, and I'm going to call them kids, okay? They come through Little League, high school, and they get to college, and everybody talks about what a great player they are, and you don't hear a whole lot about their background until they become such a great player that people want to feature them on shows, or the draft is coming up and people want to look into their background and all that. But we're talking about guys that are going from nothing to millionaires literally overnight. Literally overnight. From nothing to millionaires, literally overnight. They need somebody like my man.
Especially, we talk about the contracts and the gotchas and all the little things that are in the contracts. And as you know, I market legal services in my other life, so I always talk about having those agreements looked at by an attorney. And Mr. Copeland said, when he was drafted, said they gave him like a 1 point something million dollar contract. He said he saw about $26,000 of that money.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Before he got fired, said the first time. There's so many things built into that, where these guys, you got to make the team. You know what I mean? You got to watch out for injuries. You can't have no off the field situations. All of those things can completely, derail you. Then, a lot of these guys were pretty smart and saying, I think, and when they were on TV and having their chance to speak, that they were quite willing to play special teams and they could do all of this stuff. They just want to get on the squad, man. And that actually makes sense. I forget what the practice squad makes, but they're like 6-figure income earners. It's not the big money, but it ain't a bad job if you can get it. You know what I mean? So just trying to get your foot in, and then trying to stay long enough that you can qualify, you can vest,
Right.
And then you got, some really smart people. I think, was the running back down with the Saints?
Alvin Kamara.
Alvin said something to the effect he had not spent any of his contract money.
Yeah, he's not the only one. There's a couple guys done that.
Yeah. And we all know our friend Kirk Cousins is known for not spending any money, making all that big guaranteed money. So those are some good examples that these young men can show. Get the money first. Like Brandon said, he doesn't count until it hit his bank account.
Right. Yeah, you can't, and that's a mistake that a lot of guys make. That's why you can't have Uncle Julius run your affairs for you. You know what I mean? You got to get a real financial advisor. You have to get an agent. You have to get somebody who really knows what they're doing, and then if you're able to do what you got to do on the field, okay. Once you get through your first contract and get to free agency, that's when you can make your money. You make your mark money wise. But if you've been able to do that, where you're a valid free agent that people are after, or even to the point where the team you're on wants to tag you, franchise tag you, so that you can't go to another team, by then perhaps you have some endorsements. And I believe Kamara lives off his endorsement money.
Probably so.
So he's living a great lifestyle. So if normal people are right here, he's like here.
Yeah, he's up there.
That's just off his endorsements.
Right.
If he really lived off it, he'd be up there.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't need to live up there.
Yeah.
Right here's cool for me.
What Mr. Copeland said was, he said, I don't want to live like a king for a short period of time. I'd rather live like a prince forever.
Forever.
For a long period of time.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Perfect statement.
Rather live like a prince forever than a king for a short period of time. He's absolutely correct.
Absolutely. One of my pages, bizbreakfast.net, promotes the concept of financial independence, where you have enough assets to live off of the income from those assets, as if, for example, you had, let's say, $1 million in real estate and you were receiving 5% cash flow off of it. So what's that, $50,000 a year? Well, if you can live off of $50,000 a year, you're free. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about a job and all of those types of things. So these young men are put in that position automatically. And some of them we've seen in the past, people have blown it, getting into some speculative businesses and, getting involved with investments that they were not familiar with, and just listening to other people without having that background of knowledge themselves, which is really probably the number one suggestion. I don't know if Brandon made it, but I'll make it, is that they have to become somewhat self-knowledgeable, because whether you have an accountant, an attorney, agent, you still are paying them. So you have to provide some level of leadership. Yes. Although they're highly trained professionals, you still are paying them. So,
and they still work for you. So the number one thing you have to learn is how to say no.
That's exactly what Brandon said. So I'm gonna leave it on that right there. Okay, we're about to wrap this puppy up, Benny. We're at the point where, you know, a lot of times we have our little commentary at the end. So I want to talk about something that struck me a little weird, and maybe, you know, maybe I'm just being a little hypersensitive. I don't know.
Probably are, but go ahead.
Probably are. I know. But as I'm listening to them talk about the draftees, especially those draftees who had former NFL players or former professional athletes in their background.
Okay.
That's where even the African American announcers begin to talk about them like they're cattle. Talk about they have great bloodlines, things of that nature. And you know, you've had people out there talk about the NFL and, you know, how much control they have over players. And I thought about it, and I'm like, I can see that those people who have those players in their background should be advanced just because they have had exposure to a knowledge base that most kids don't have. Like when I grew up, there was nobody in my family that even was interested in football. So, you know, I got nothing pretty much from my mom or my dad. It was all what I wanted and what I went out and found, et cetera, et cetera. But when you start to talk about a Sartain, you know, or a Horn son, you know, and these guys, they're great athletes, but should we really be talking about them in that manner? And is it accurate? Because when I look at Kwity Paye, who we talked about, that young man is a beast. I don't know if you could go back and say anything about bloodlines and all of that stuff with him. He's just a beast. His mother is like half the size of him. The poor thing, she's down here. He's up here. He's out here. She's like this.
Well, we don't know what his dad looked like, but obviously he had no football.
Exactly. He didn't have any of that football. Now his grandfather, she had a picture. He didn't seem to be a big, massive guy. He was just a regular little guy, you know. That was his grandfather.
Yeah,
what do you think about that type of conversation when you're talking about people?
No, I agree with you, man. I get it.
No.
I get it. But it's
Hold it. Pause the show.
Wait, no. It's how can I say this? It makes for more, I'm not saying this right. It makes for more interesting conversation when you're talking about sports to keep it tilted toward the physical aspect. Does that make sense? In other words, Asante Samuel Jr. is probably as good as he is and will probably be a pretty good or possibly really good defensive back in the NFL because his father was a defensive back in the NFL. It doesn't necessarily have to do with bloodlines, whatever that means, or genetics. It does have something to do with genetics, but it's mostly the mentals. It's mostly
we've seen some really great football players, kids, not well. I think Barry Sanders' son, for example, he's a running back.
Yeah, he didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
Walter Payton's son didn't make it.
That just the thought of that is kind of mind blowing.
There's a bunch. I'm still waiting on Deion's kids. So you know we'll see about that. But look, DK Metcalf's father was an offensive lineman. He was huge. Had nothing to do with being a wide receiver or being fast. You know what I mean? So it's more about having football in the family, just like you said. Okay. And obviously there are kids that make it because they just discover football or their mom says, you want to play football? Go ahead. You know what I mean? And they turn out to be good. But these guys who have fathers and uncles and all that have gone as far as the NFL, whether they were stars or not, they do have somewhat of an advantage on the mental side, as far as what goes on, what it takes to make it, working out properly, uh, sending them to the right school that has the particular coaches, things that the normal everyday kid may not know. So yeah, they got a little advantage, but it's not necessarily bloodlines. Okay. Yes, genetics does play a part. Yes, if your parents are athletic, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be athletic. But that doesn't mean you're going to grow up to be an athlete. You might be a freaking IT guy. I don't know.
I
I'm
just,
just saying.
I just thought it was, I don't know. I wouldn't say demeaning per se because they were saying it with all due respect and, as if that's a great thing. You know what I mean? And let's face it. I mean, you would expect that the father's 7 foot, the son will probably be, or the daughter will probably be tall. So I
Right. So
understand it.
they didn't do a Jimmy the Greek.
Right. Remind people what that was.
Oh my God. So Jimmy the Greek, back in the day, he was some Vegas guy that they used to bring on the NFL games or the pre-games. And although gambling wasn't big back then, well, it was big, but it wasn't legally big like it is now. And he would give his perspective from a gambling point of view about who he thought was going to win, this, that, and the other. And after a while, they started giving him a little bit more leeway to talk about players and talk about teams and things like that. And somehow, some way, in a particular game, he got off on this tangent about, oh, no, wait. That's not the guy I was thinking of. The guy I was thinking of worked for the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team. His name escapes me right now, but you can Google him up. And he actually said that back in slavery times, they took the big buck and mated him with the big, strong female so that they could get stronger, bigger, stronger offspring that they knew could work long hours in the hot sun picking cotton or tobacco or whatever. And he said that same thing applied when it came to modern day athletes. Now I'm paraphrasing, but he actually went there. So that's what you don't want to do. That's what you don't want. He was immediately fired. Jimmy the Greek says something also along those lines. He was immediately dropped from the network.
All right, well, here you go. I just took a quick look at it. Jimmy the Greek, in remarks that touched off a firestorm of reaction and criticism, said in a televised interview that blacks are better athletes than whites because they have been, quote, bred to be that way.
Yeah.
And that, quote, the only thing left for whites is a couple of coaching jobs.
Wow. And that's from what, the 70s?
Oh, man. Well, let me see. This particular article was written in 1988, but long story short, yeah, that's what he said. So I don't know about the other guy.
His name was Campanis. That was his last name.
Okay.
Campanos. He got real raw. He got raw.
So you
on live TV.
You kind of see why I thought to myself, this sounds a little weird.
Believe me, bro, I understand.
So, all right. That's it for me on this side, Mr. Dickerson. Congratulations on your first mock draft. I know you're going to be more competitive next year.
I'm really proud. And I have to call my brother and let him know. Well, he'll see the show, so he'll see the list. I think considering the fact that I probably could have listened to him a little bit more. And I also believe that my 1.0, I barely wrote it down. That was just shot in the dark. My 2.0, I went with good information and I listened to my brother and I thought that one probably would have scored higher than my 3.0. But my 3.0, I started to second guess myself, which now that I've done this one time, I'll know better next time. And I'm sure we'll do better next year. But I think we did pretty well. We scored, and I hit 3 on the money. Right player to the right team at the right pick. And that's not counting Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson.
I think your Patriots pick was the one that impressed me at first.
That was big time, wasn't it?
That was a good pick.
Now, I went against my brother on that one. He said the Patriots needed to trade up. He wanted the Patriots to trade up with the Eagles to try to get Mac Jones because he knew they wanted Mac Jones. But he thought they'd have to trade up to get him. I told him no, they don't have to trade up to get him because the 49ers, as much as the people on TV kept trying to push him on your team, they wasn't having it. They made up their minds about Trey Lance. Justin Fields is a better athlete. He would be sitting there at 15 for them, and sure enough, he dropped right to him. Belichick is still a genius.
I took a quick look at that guaranteed salary, and I hate that I don't have it in front of me, but the difference between what Trevor Lawrence is expected to get in guarantees and Justin Fields is about $11 million. If I'm
$11 million?
Yeah, guaranteed salary.
We're talking about the 4th overall pick as opposed to what, the 12th overall pick?
No, the 1st overall pick.
No.
Okay, I'm talking about what the Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence. I'm sorry. You said
Trevor Lawrence is the 1st, and then Justin Fields when he went to the Bears.
Yeah, but he went at number 12.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The difference between 1 and 12 in terms of guaranteed money.
Much?
Yeah, I was surprised how much it was. So that really cost him. And, him and Trevor Lawrence were always neck and neck in terms of, the different camps and the things. He actually beat him out of certain camps, So that whatever it was that held him down really affected his money. So take a look at Ben and Barry on Football on Facebook. We do have the guaranteed salary article listed there, and you can correct me in the comments if you get a chance. All right, Mr. Dickerson, it's on you. What you got?
All I got is go Noles.